Hello. In this video I'm going to show you how to use the geolocation feature of SketchUp. So sometimes when we're building a model we might need to precisely locate our building or our model somewhere that the client has specifically asked for. And that's sometimes useful for us to be able to figure out things like the sun angles and the impact of sunlight on our interior and placement of windows, or possibly it could be in relationship to neighbors, wanting to make sure that by putting the building or building it the way we want to build it, that it doesn't impact their enjoyment of the sun. So sometimes we are asked to provide that kind of information. And SketchUp allows us to do that by using a feature that will let us place precisely our building wherever we want. So how do we do that? Well, the easiest way, or the only way to do that, is to go up to our window menu, and from there we're going to select the model info. And when we open that up, we have the menu on the left, and we need to select geolocation. So once we've got that selected, then we can add a location, and by doing so we can find any kind of location if we're just sort of looking around for a nice place to put a building, or if we have a specific location that we already have an address for, we can do that. In our case today, I've already put in the address of our school, so that's not really a residential location, but for the purposes of this video, I'm going to say that we are going to place this house right next to our building, so that way when the president visits from the East Coast and he needs somewhere to stay, he can stay in our wonderfully scenic industrial park and enjoy the convenience of being right next door to the school. So basically what we do once we've found our location is then we need to select the region and how close we want to zoom in or zoom out. I'm not sure if we can zoom in any closer. I think 18 might be the closest that we're allowed to zoom in this particular case. Sometimes it depends on how much the information that's being shared and the city that you're actually using, how close you can zoom in. So in our case, level 18 is as close as we're going to get. And then we just click on this button here to select the region. And by pulling these pins in closer, you can see that we can control the amount of area around our site, and we can then also drag our center of our map as we wish, and just by using the hand tool, as it's just a default. So once I've got that set to approximately what I need, then I can click on the import button. And once I do that, I can wait a minute, and you can see up here in our window for the model info, it's given us the exact location, the exact latitude and longitude, and the city and country and everything else that we need to know. Okay, so once that's located here, we can close this window, and now we just need to adjust a couple of things so that it works with our model. So as you can see, the image that comes in, it's a little bit high. It's a bit above the 0 axis, and I'm not quite sure why it does that, but it might have something to do with the terrain that comes with it. Because when we import an image like this, we're also given the terrain that this little piece of property that we've selected is situated on. And I can see that by going into my layers palette, and down at the bottom here I've got a location snapshot, which is the image that you can see right now, as well as a location terrain, but that layer is shut off by default. So if I were to turn off my location snapshot and then turn on my location terrain, you can see it kind of feels like the same thing, with the picture placed at the uppermost part of that piece of land. So when I shut that off and zoom back, you can kind of get an appreciation for the terrain and the way it's been brought into the model. Sometimes that's important because we might have a site that's got some change in elevation from one part to the next. It's not extremely accurate, but it does give you an approximation of the levels in your area. Okay, so I'm going to turn the terrain off because we're not going to worry about that today. But I do want to lower my image so that it's not actually cutting into my building. So what I need to do, as you can see when I select it, it's got a red perimeter on it, which means it's locked. So we can lock anything in SketchUp simply by selecting it and choosing lock from the right click menu. But so I want to be able to move this, and until I unlock it I won't be able to do that. So I need to right click and select unlock, and then when I go in, and then I can move my elevation lower so that I'm not actually burying half my building. So we'll lock it to the blue constraint and then put it somewhere around that level. That's good enough for our purposes today. So once we've done that, then we might want to actually rotate our building to be better situated on the image. And if I go to a top view, I can see that right now my building's in the middle of the street, which is probably not the greatest location. So I'm just going to rotate my building around to not only get off the street, but also to be more aligned with the grid or the alignment of the streets. And this isn't, again, I'm not being overly precise, I'm just trying to get it approximately in the location that I want. So you can see that that's a pretty simple process. Now the one thing about rotating our whole model in order to match up with our site, it will be a little bit more difficult now to actually do any modeling unless we do one small thing. So I'm going to hide my location snapshot layer for now. And you can see when I look at the building relative to the SketchUp axes, it's not lined up anymore. So if I were to try and continue modeling, obviously I'm going to have some issues because this is no longer lined up with my building. So I can actually adjust that so that the axes are now aligned to my new placement. And the way I do that is over on the large tool palette. I've got this thing next to the letter A called axes. And if I click on that, what this does is it allows me to reorient my X, Y, and Z axes. So if I come over and I pick what I think should be the corner of the building, both for height and X and Y coordinates. So I'm just going to pick this corner of the front stair. The first thing you do is you click to start the process, and then you drag it out in what you want to be the X-axis. So I could drag that this way, which would be more towards me. So you can see like that. And then my Y I might have going in this direction here. And so now that I've placed that, if I go to a top view, it's still oriented based on the original axes, but I can see that my new axis placement would allow me to easily start modeling things that will still work easily with this building. Okay, so there's lots of things that we can use this for, and sometimes when we have a building that's got multiple angles within the building itself, sometimes we want to move that axes around to just model different parts of the building, and that can speed things up quite a bit. And if we ever want to reset it to the original, all we need to do is move our cursor over one of the axes lines, right click on it, and just select reset, and then that will put the axes back to where it should be, okay, in the orientation that it should be. So that's basically how we can geolocate our building. And as I said, this is a useful thing to do for shadow studies, and with the shadow button turned on, you can see that shadows are indeed being cast, and depending on the time of day, where those shadows are going to fall, as well as the time of month, or time of month, time of year, the month of the year, and so on, which particular day. And if I need to be even more precise, I simply go into my shadows palette over here, and I can literally enter exact times and exact dates in order to be able to figure out those impactful times of the year, like the summer solstice or the winter solstice and so on, in order to see where exactly our shadows fall. Okay, so that's how we can use the geolocation feature in SketchUp. So I hope you enjoyed that. Thanks.